give it a sec. So like we were saying, last week when we had a bit of a chat, we were talking about how we scalp, and I flashed up some of the Renko charts, and a couple of people wanted to go through and watch a scalp, which is fine. I'm more than willing to do that for anyone, any chance I get. The hardest part with the way I scalp is I tend to use the Renko bars. So, and with the Renko bars, it can be quite slow. So it's not scalping where it's really fast and furious like some scalping techniques, because I tend to use a 5-brick Renko. But with scalping, there's a million and one ways to do it. I believe I flashed a site that had some 17 odd different scalping techniques, and if you type in MT4 Scalp Forex or something similar into the Google search engine, you'll get thousands and thousands of pages. The thing with scalping that I find, guys, is you've got to find a system that you're comfortable with initially, and then use that system in such a way that you start to own it. You have to have confidence in it, have to trust it, know your pros and cons, and know when you're going to use it. And that only comes with screen time. Now, a couple of years ago, I would spend a bucket load of time. I don't scalp anywhere as much nowadays as I used to. I've been primarily focusing on that swing failure, the smart money with sterling, or the market makes, whatever you want to call it, and using that direction to actually help facilitate my scalps. And if I'm in a position, I will then use my scalping along it to either add to that position or kick my percentage along. So thanks to Ben Osmond, who helped me get some data and stuff, and to Brent, I've gotten an EA. I went and bought Brent's EA that he had purchased from a site, and we're going to set it up, and we're going to run through scalping the way I do. Now, right in front of you is a notepad. It's not exactly how I do it nowadays, but it's still pretty similar. And I've got a little zip file with all the indicators that I use, and this same little notepad here for everyone. I did have it in my Dropbox, but for some reason there's a link problem. So by all means, guys, scalp me. Further up in there was my Skype address, I should say, Dr. Charles with a Z and a K. Hope you can read that. Or better yet, I forgot I could do this. There you go, guys. Dr. Charles with a K. Excuse the cursor at the end. And if you want to get a copy of them, of the scalping indicators and stuff, by all means, it's even got a Renko EA. I can't get you the backtesting EA because that's something that I purchased, but by all means use whatever else I've got in there. Now, just to quickly start going over it, what I've got in this little note, which I'll get you guys to read, is basically the setup that I use on my Renko chart. And my Renko chart is basically a moving crossover. I have my Renko bars, and the reason why I like the Renko bars is there's less noise. I've tried scalping on 1 minute, and that was just a nightmare for me. Too much noise, too much chatter and everything else, and it caused me a lot of issues, and I tend to move trades, and it's hard to pick your direction. You can push out to a 5-minute, 15-minute, you can basically use a scalping technique on any time frame you like. You've got to find what suits you best. On my Renkos, I don't have the arrow indicators, although sometimes I still use them. They're basically an even quicker crossover. I do have these scalper candles. These are based on a Heiken Ashi chart, I believe. I think that's what it is. And basically what that does, it helps to confirm a trend. It'll paint the candles green or it'll paint the candles red if we're in an uptrend or a downtrend respectively. I do have 2 moving averages. Now, on the Renko chart, I'm using a 5-period smooth moving average, one set to the high and one set to the low price. And what that does is it creates a channel. So we'll have a channel that's moving in a certain direction, so for example bullish, and I've got it coloured as well. And then what I'm looking for is a break with my Renko out of that channel. And then what that shows me is the channel gives me my medium-term momentum. The candles themselves actually give me my fast momentum. And then underneath that I have a MACD alerter, and my MACD is set, that should be at 25, is set, and what that does, it gives me two lines which will then give me like a crossover, and that gives me my long-term or longer-term momentum. So my MACD gives me my gross direction, the channel gives me the movement within that direction, and then the break out of the candles out of that tells me that there's momentum entering the market, and then I can scalp. And that's basically what we're looking at. Phil was lovely and created an ADX and an ADX alerter and a few other bits and pieces. I don't use them as much because they do protect you in your trades. It's much more conservative, but you also do tend to miss out on trades. So, and over time I've adapted and I've changed, and what I've been doing lately is using the swing failure to help with my direction bias. So that's basically what's going on, and that's the scalp. So does that all make sense to everyone? Anything confusing in there? Okay. It gets much clearer once we see it on a chart, so let's get out of WordPad. Save those chances. Now, following on from our backtesting video that we'd all done, I'm using the trade box to help to be my EA. I'm actually in the strategy tester in MT4. The EA that we're using to create the Renko chart works offline, so you'll see there's no connection there. So we have to save data and everything else. And what we'll do is I've done it for the euro on a 5 pip. So we'll be scalping the euro dollar. When you're scalping, you want to stick to pairs that have got a lot of liquidity, that do have a lot of volatility. I know people get scared of volatility, but you need that volatility. That is what helps positions move in your favor. And you want to stick to the hours where that pair tends to work the most. So using the trade box EA to run the strategy tester, and we're doing on a 5 pip Renko on the euro dollar, which is probably one of the most traded. So with that, if you remember, I've got the bar set to slow. We will start the chart up, and I'm going to apply my template. And there we are. Hold on. That's me playing from before. Okay guys, so before we start, I'll actually go through this. Is that picture coming through okay? Cool, Sam. Now guys, so if we go, thank you Brent. So what we've basically got here is the basic chart background is my swing failure chart. We've got this box here, actually. We'll go pink. That's terrible. We've got this box here, which is Asia. This box here is the US session. In between someone here, we've got the European session. Now, what we've got here in front of our charts, at the bottom we've got the MACD. And my settings here are actually a little bit different. There are 5, 20, 25. And what that does is it gives me two lines. It gives me my direction bias, and it gives me my momentum bias for the longer term. So if this here is red, I am only going to look for shorts. And then if the short-term momentum or the longer-term momentum starts to improve, in this area here, I'm looking for longs. You with me there, guys? Where you have to be careful is where there's a crossover. If it's grey, even if it looks like it's crossing over, I tend to be very cautious and don't take those trades. I tend to wait for a retrace as much as possible. So watch that crossover zone because it can bounce like it did. Yeah. If you thought you were going to take this one long, bounce back, we didn't get quite of a green candle. So we've got the MACD. On the actual chart itself, we've got a moving average, one on the high, one on the low, and it's a 5-period smooth weighted moving average on the high and on the low. And that gives us our channel. And what we've got here is we want to take our long-term momentum. For example, here we're here going down on the red. Our channel starting to move down. And then our short-term momentum is the actual Renko candles themselves. And I'm looking for a break through the channel. So if I clear out some of that garbage, I'm looking for that break in line with our momentum. Does that make sense, guys? Good stuff. Now, the times I don't trade. I don't like trading Asia. Forgive me if there's any Asian friends in there. I don't like Asia. Oh yeah, we want to move out of the channel. So basically you've got do we have settings now in Aussie dollar? I use exactly the same setup for the Aussie dollar, pound dollar and anything else. So what we might do is we'll work through the euro because that's what I've got it currently saved on. And if you like, Zoran, I'll stay back and I'll redo it up on the Aussie dollar as well. Oh, live. I don't have a live chart. The way the backtesting Renko works, Tamp, is it does it for me offline, so I do apologize, Zoran. So that's what at the break or at the close of the brick. Always at the close of the brick. And that's very important. I sometimes get impatient and want to start to take a trade. For example, if we've just had a push up here, then we've had a retrace back in, this candle here started to print as if it's going to break, but it didn't. It dropped further down and then it went back up. So always take it on the close. No worries. So without any further ado, if everything's going to plan, we'll start to zip this up a bit. Now, didn't even get a chance to get started, did we? Before I do start, I will actually pause the screen because we've got a $10,000 account. Pause the screen. We just missed that trade, which is fine. $10,000 account. I normally risk 0.5% to 1%. So, and I've already got the factor set in here on a 17 pip. If we go 1%, 17 pips, good. That'll be 5 points, oh, about 0.6. Whoops, forgive me. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got a 17 pip stop. I've got an artificial 50 pip target because I do let some positions run. Our trailing stop kicks in at plus 10. Now I'll stop those trades at any stage when I think momentum's turning the other way. So that's how that works. So what we do here is, all with me so far? We'll start that rolling. And I'll speed it up a bit for you. Now, this candle here was actually a perfect trade. You could have actually entered that one and you would have been up 7 pips minus the spread. You'd be up 4 or 5 and you could have closed that out if you wanted to. Or some people let it run to 10. So this is coming out of our channel, which is what we would have liked to have seen. We've come out of Euro, out of the Asia session, sorry. We've hit a high. Let's see how it goes. Now, because I do swing failure, I do like drawing my highs on. The one thing you have to be careful, guys, if you want to scalp or trade with a Renko chart is because it's not associated with price, one candle can take a second to form or it can take hours to form. And this is sometimes a problem because you could take this breakout trade, and even though we have time sped up here, now in reality it might have actually taken a good couple of hours to drop. So do be careful for me. So the problem with backtesting is we get these nice little backtests coming through, but in reality they're not always indicative of what really happens in the market. So just be careful. Because a candle happens to really form and can be fairly exciting when we're backtesting, in the real live market, that might have taken several hours to form. That's at 10 o'clock. 2 o'clock, so from there to there is a 2-hour move. My priority is to protect my account. So if I get paranoid that momentum's starting to stall, I will actually stop a scalp. Now, I have lately changed my approach to a small degree. And what I mean by that is because I've started to look more at swing failures, and that's why I was looking at that market high, is that if I start to see a potential reversal happen, I might let part of my scalp run a little bit further. I can't close partial positions though with the trade box, which is a pity, because what would normally happen is at 5 to 10 pips I'd close 60% of my position, and that's, guys, what's typical of Renko. We've just had a spike straight up, so I wouldn't be surprised with the US session coming in line here. We're getting a fair bit of momentum coming up. I'll probably aim and shoot for those highs, but we don't have a setup yet. So usually I close at 6 to 10 pips, 60% of my position, and then I'd start to trail. And usually I trail between 12 and 15 pips or 2 bricks. And sometimes I'll let it come back into the channel slightly, and then because sometimes it'll continue out. Another good thing you can do is you can still scalp, but no one says you have to close your position early, though. So if you find that there's a decent support or resistance, aim for it. Not necessarily, Phil. I used to try to do that, but it's just adding the channel's more important than the actual color of the channel, itself. The channel itself is just a faster term momentum, so we've got long-term momentum, quicker term momentum. The channel itself and its direction is probably more important than anything else. And then we've got the bars themselves. Some people will take a trade and hold on to it until the bar changes color. But it's just something you can experiment and try with, whatever suits. Now, we're going to be really cautious coming into the US because that's still red, so I'm not going to take this trade. And then we've got a high up here as well. So it'll just zoom along and see how it goes. I also try to stay away from scalping at news. I don't trade around news as a normal rule unless I'm in a position and I'm in profit and I've moved to break even. I can't control what happens with news, so I tend to stay away from it. Other people have done really well with it. I've just seen too much weird and wonderful things. Now guys, see that sudden move back up again? That's a spike. So when you see price changing that quick, I've got a feeling this will spike up and then it'll start to come back down again. And that'll just be my interpretation of it. And given that we've had these highs out of Europe, out of the Asia box and then through Europe, it'll probably retest those highs. If it breaks the high, then we can look at a breakout trade up 20-30 pips. If it bounces back and rejects it, then we could actually look at a swing failure trade and trade it back down again. The longer term momentum's starting to get up above the zero line and the momentum's trying to break through it, so I'll wait for a break of this candle, and if it does, we'll take a trade. Take care, Ben, and it'll be recorded, buddy. So we've got a nice rejection off the top, it looks like. Now let's see if we get a breakout trade. It's trying, it's trying, it's trying. Now if someone had preempted and jumped the gun here and taken that out, they would be at break even. Now we've just had an immediate reversal. So if this breaks down through the channel for me, I'll actually take this as a swing failure. So in my case, even though I scalp and I try to stick to my scalping rules, I do incorporate my longer term momentum. The other thing I'm doing at the same time, which I can't do with backtesting, is I'd have a 15-minute chart up at the same time to actually see what's happening with price action, what I call naked price action. And that would help me get a feel for what's happening in the market. This cuts out the noise and shows me resistance levels, like we just bounced off a resistance level. And I'll slow that down a bit, because if this candle actually breaks down low, I'll take this trade as a swing failure and we'll aim for 20 to 30 pips. And you can see the momentum's actually turning over as well. And that's basically all it is. It's not exciting or flamboyant, and we're not using fancy ratios and fibs and everything else, which some people do fantastic with. It's just basically waiting for a crossover and taking your opportunity when it arises. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Now, MACD's crossed, we've taken a short, and I'll speed that up a bit. Get ready to close out. It's just at those lows. So red candle, MACD's crossed over, and we've just formed our first. Now, if you wanted to, you could close out here and take your few pips and you'd be up 0.25%. I'll let the stop kick in, which tells me that we've hit plus 10. And because I'm using it as a swing failure, I'll try to let it run to about 20 odd. But if need be, I'll actually move the stop. There we go. Now, whoops, I'll delete that. The one thing the trade box does let me do is draw profit and stop lines in. So we'll move our stop. And we're going to move our stop again. That's to the base of that candle. So we're up 1% already, which is great. Our stop is currently about 13 pips, oh sorry, 11 pips. And I'll just keep trailing this behind the brick and behind the last wick until we get, well, until we hit our profit target in this case. So price has just spiked down fairly hard. So nice little scalp, guys. Now in reality, that's still dropping a fair bit. So do I use market orders or pending orders? I don't. I use market orders, Brent. I tend to look at where it's going into. Sometimes I'll preempt it if I see the momentum's changing, and I'm waiting, for example, if we're looking at this position, I might have a pending order a couple of pips above it, but I get wary of being spiked in and out of trades, champ, which always worries me. So I tend to go in at market. So our momentum here, guys, is to the downside, following our MACD here. So if this closes in through the channel and then comes back out of it, I'll actually take another short. There we go. Stops placed automatically. Now, because we've already had one push, okay, I don't know how it's going to muck around in US session. Into US session, and we're getting into Euro. So we'll cut this one pretty quickly if it gets between 5 and 10. G'day Brendan, I'm well, buddy, yourself? So let's... Good champ, good to hear. I just closed out of that position. And if it drops now, I'll be really cranky at myself. So, and that was just a quick scalp. So we had a break back into the channel. We took this break, it retraced on us, and we closed out fairly quickly. Now we're getting into the Asia session. So I'm going to speed that up because, well, too fast. I don't trade Asia. And we'll let it run. Okay, let's just slow that down again. Any questions so far, guys? So we've had one day of trading and we're up 2.17%, so not too bad. This is still close to Asia, and you can see the momentum indicator is getting confused about whether it's going to be green or red. So we're just going to wait. Normally what I find is we'll get a push out of Asia and the Renko chart will change color one way, and then that's the head fake, and then we start to get the real move afterwards. So we'll let it move, let it do its thing, and we can be patient. Good night, Elanga. So now we're definitely confirmed. So if I get a break back into that channel and coming back out of it, we'll start taking a short. So in terms of some of the other scalping methods, which is, for example, Aid's got a really cool scalping methodology where he uses a range chart rather than a Renko chart, looks at a 5 and 13 EMA cross, and basically takes a break of an ATR. And that actually works quite well as well. And that tends to create a lot more trades. I like this sort of method because I can incorporate my swing failures and I can actually try to stick to a direction. So we're green at the moment. We'll zoom that up, guys. And that's the joys. Oops. And that's the joys of backtesting. Bring that back in. So when that broke out, it was still green, so we didn't take that one. Not so much from each Asia session, from each move within this bar. So in this case, because of Asia, I would use Asia as a reset Brent, which is a good point. And I'd look to take it that way. And not knowing which level I'm in, considering this has moved 5, 10, 15, almost 20 pips out, you may be thinking of maybe a swing failure back the other way. But my two moves are usually within the one session. You start to get this sort of cluster. 2 to 3 moves, Brent, similar to what most of the other guys look for. You tend to get 3 waves or 3 pushes. You get one up, maybe take a second, but you wouldn't want to take a third. So now if that closes up, breaks above it, we'll actually take that as a long. Doesn't want to close above. And it is, in all honesty guys, fairly boring. So there's that sharp move down again. So if this goes down and gets rejected and comes back out of the channel, then I'll start considering a swing failure to the upside. If it breaks down and keeps breaking these lows, then we'll look for a setup and scalp to the short side. The good thing about using a method like this, believe it or not, is that, which sounds contradictory in terms of scalping, is that it does wrong momentum. That would have been a nice trade, but our momentum's wrong. The good thing about this sort of thing is it does tend to keep you out of trade, so you're not over trading to a huge extent. We don't want to trade and scalp recklessly or needlessly. If we can have some structure behind it, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is improve our account. So this has actually been a boring session so far. And it's kept us out of this chop. This sort of zone here is a pain in the backside. And what we've basically got is we've got support and resistance zones through that area. Now if we get a close above that zone or below this zone, you might want to take that as a breakout trade. So if this closes red, I might take that as a breakout scalp. We'll stick to our scalping strategies. That's all right, Joanne. Don't ever apologise to me. You're always welcome. So if we weren't just scalping, we might start drawing willy boxes, and trying to take a break out of a willy box. But we'll stick just to scalping, and we'll speed that up a bit. So there's the breakdown. Now if you're a breakout trader, this would probably be an entry point at this point in time, because you've got a confirmed close outside the box. And there must have been a news release there. And if you're a breakout trader, you'd be very happy now. If you're a scalper, you'd be a little bit ticked off. Let it run. So in this case, the breakout trades moved a nice 30 odd pips. Now this is definitely red. If I want to take this short, I want to trace back into the channel and take the breakout again. I personally probably would have, Brent. I do tend to look at my momentum indicators to get a feel for things. I am trying to, on my 15-minute chart is probably where I would have paid a little bit more attention to see what sort of candles were forming, whether they were spiking up or spiking down, because at the end of the day our indicators do lag, and because they are lagging, we want to be a little bit cautious of that. So the MACD didn't cross until after that really quick move down, and you saw how quick those candles formed. So my gut feeling would be that we probably had a news trade or something or other, or news event happen. This is why the European session here was so flat. And being flat, we'll probably get a bit of a better move come into the US session. So I would have actually hesitated with that MACD cross because it was still showing momentum. The MACD itself was curving up. Now if we get a close up here, chat, we're going to take a long trade. So I'll slow that down if it closes above for us. So it does tend to slow me up. And this is why your anchor chart, your 15-minute anchor chart is so important. Now I do know I've got some other friends that scalp that use a very similar system that I've got to meet through some other forums, and they don't even use a MACD. They just take the breakout out of the channel bow. So they will take this position now as a short. They jump in, and they've got much smaller targets, so they would have jumped out at 5 pips. If it moves a couple more pips lower, there we go. They would have actually jumped out at 5 pips there and taken a bit of a trade. But we've had such a strong down move, and this is where if you're scalping guys, you've got to just use a bit of common sense. We've had a huge move down, gone through a news event, and now we're forming this sort of action into the US session. So around this time of night is when I start scalping again. I'd be looking for the New York reversal. Now, if this starts to turn it back around and it starts to go to the upside, I'll take it for a long position. But we'll see. Now that's turned red, but this candle here isn't actually touching the channel. The wick doesn't count, so I don't take that one. And it does get slow that way, though it's a fairly conservative approach, and I tend to be very conservative by nature. I'm trading, not to make a living out of it. That's not how I make my living, but this is part of my super or 401k for the US guys or whatnot. I've got a very tiny portion of the kids' trust in it, and little bits and pieces. So that's how I was trading. Now I've actually closed all of my accounts, and when I reopen again, because I'm doing some work, I'll trade it again, the same conservative approach. I know some scalpers that risk 3, 4, 5% a trade, which to me is interesting because I couldn't handle those sort of losses. So you've got to find something that you're comfortable with, the way you want to trade. Now we're at green, so now we're looking at a long trade. And I'll wait until I get everything lining up. And a smart cookie told me that we don't get paid to trade, we get paid with our patience, or based on our patience. Oops. So it's just retesting those lows again. Now if we get a rejection off this low, guys, we'll be in the New York reversal, and I'll expect that to start to shoot back up. If it breaks down below it, we could take a breakout trade and draw another willy box through there. So if it comes close to this red line again, I'll slow it down and we'll take a buy position. And then we just watch the price action. Price action is what will confirm all. Okay. So there we are. One, two, three, 4, 5. So we'll get up to 10 pips as soon as our break even kicks in. And that's now starting to go against us. So I've just paused it. We've taken that candle there. I'll show you here. We've taken this candle here. We've entered on that. We've had a break of the channel, and we've got a green MACD The momentum is fairly flat, guys, the longer term momentum, so just be aware of that. No, but the medium-sized momentum seems to be on the upside, so the market is trying to turn to the up. And we'll let that run. And given that this is still fairly flat, it's not a position that I'm going to try to hold for, a big massive amount of pips. And this is where the art of actually starting to read your charts and being aware of what's happening on your anchor charts is important. So market's flip-flopping around, and if it starts to come out of the channel, I'll still close it and take a loss. I won't let it, risk it running all the way up and hitting my target through there. So we just closed out of that. What was that? Nice 8 pips. That was actually fairly quick. In real time, that would have occurred much slower. So we're up just over 2.6%. We don't take that trade because that's green. And now we just wait for a setup again. And this is what we do as traders, is we wait. You have to be patient. Now, if this starts to turn red, it's got to come back into the channel and then break back out of the channel. Now, usually by this time of night, I'm actually asleep. The action I want is around the European Open and the US Open. So, hold on a sec, guys. On that candle there, we'll take a position. And it's starting to reverse against us. I'll close out of that, it's broken below it. So there's our first loss. But you can see down here that the MACD is starting to slope up. We've had a big push down, and now we're starting to form this wavy W pattern. So that there's not quite a clear enough entry for me. I'll let it run a little bit more. It is actually Asia though, champ. Thank you for reminding me. I tend to ignore my own colours. But if this was, say, out of the Asia box, this is where I would take a trade right on this candle here. Read all this stuff on my other tests. So if we had taken that trade, it would be sitting at roughly break even minus your spread, and now you'd be in profit. But like you said, Bo, that is Asia. Thank you. Now, what some people will do as they're scalping through this section is they'll start drawing in their fib levels. I had a chat to JJ about it, and he'd like to draw his fib levels on the retracements. Now we're going to test these highs. Does anyone else? Sorry, Phil, it was you that told me it was Asia. I do apologise. Does anybody else scalp or do something similar or have any technique that they prefer? We're getting close to the Asian session, so let's see if it has a head fake for us or not. I'll speed that up a little bit, guys. Now, they say the first move out of, now if you're doing a swing failure, that'll be your swing failure. This is an extended box, so you'd have to be careful. So if on our 15-minute chart we had a push up and a break back down again, we would start taking this position down low as a swing failure, and I'd aim for the bottom of the Asian box. But we're going to scalp, and I just missed that scalp entry for you, so I do apologise. And that shifted down fairly quick. So that's a swing high, guys. And as it's come back down, it's tried to retest, didn't quite get there, and we had a breakdown again, and it's actually dropped. Ah, but we all miss those ones, Chan. We all miss them. This one I'd actually need this green candle to close into the channel, and then the red channel to break back out of it to consider taking that short. Whoops. Forgive me, guys. Okay. So I need that to break in and come back out again. So the momentum's definitely changing downwards, but we've had such a big drop and we're into the US session. So this is where, again, I'd start to think, okay, let's see it make a peak low. Let's see if it makes a W pattern and take it back the other way. And both they're the two main times when most of the manipulation starts to occur, through here and through this part of the US session, the first half. And that's where if you're doing your swing failures and you're tying this in with your 15-minute chart, you'd grab those. The scalp is actually just extra icing on the cake, if that makes sense. Any other question, guys? Now, what I've also done, guys, is I've allowed the mic to be shared. So it's still pushing down. So if anyone wants to say anything, by all means do so. So we're way out of the box here. So this will start to reverse back up for us. And I'll zip that up for you a bit so you aren't getting bored sitting there. Joanne, I am recording it. Thank you for reminding me again. Now guys, we had a big push down and the momentum started to angle up. So if it breaks down, we can take a trade, but this to me would start to look risky. We've got a lot of downside momentum, although if it breaks above it, I would actually look for a swing failure to the long side. So didn't quite get the MACD crossing over. So if that does shoot off, we'll actually miss it. Let's see which way the market's going to move. There we go. Drop straight down again. Break through that. Now, this is a dicey trade. So if I was going to take this one, we're not going to aim for a huge amount if it hits, because it's definitely finding some sort of resistance through there. And we'll get ready to close out of it if it starts to go above and close above it. See what it does with that high and that moving average. It's finding a bit of resistance through there. So if it breaks through, we close. If it drops back down, we cut our losses. We cut our profit at 5 to 10 pips. And just move forward a bit. Down to those lows. And we got out. So nice little trade scalp short. And if I held for a little bit longer, we would have had a few more pips. And that's what happens sometimes. You can't pick those guys. Now, we've had this resistance. So Momentum Angel doesn't play a decision. Momentum Angel, you'll have to introduce me to her one day, Bo. Now guys, we've had this push up, so we've got a resistance level here that it struggled to break. So we'll draw that in just at that point, because see how the momentum's, long-term momentum's angling down, but we're getting a short retrace. Normally if this breaks up green, I'll take it long, but I won't. I'll just be cautious with that momentum. It's such a strong down push and then a failed little pattern through here, you'd get a little bit cautious. I would actually trade this as a breakout, not as a scalp. And we've just had a quick spike up. Now if this spikes and closes above it, we'll probably consider taking a trade. And a small position because it's against a lot of that trend. If it starts to turn against us, we'll actually cut it out. And I go the other way. And it's actually being rejected off that high. So we'll take that loss. And we let her run. Though the Momentum Angel hasn't been good to us today. So we've had a rejection off that high. And now the market's starting to turn to the downside. Loss on both sides. And you'll get that Bo. Because what tends to happen is, the worst thing you'll find with scalping a Renko chart is this sort of sideways action. You need this momentum, this volatility that I talk about. We rely on that so much for our scalping. If it's a volatile market and it's moving strongly, like now we're getting a push, if I get a retrace, I'll take this down, and I'm pretty adamant that it'll actually go fairly well. That'll be good. But when we get into this sort of chop, we have real problems. And this is where your anchor chart, a 15-minute chart, plays such a vital role, because you can see that irregularity through there and everything else that's been going on. So if I get back into this channel, I'll actually take a short. But we've just got to watch that momentum. It's starting to flatten out on us a bit. Let's turn green. Now, that is so tempting, but because we've got a market low here and our momentum's still green, I'll let that pass. And I'll let it pass, Bo and Phil and guys, all the time. Now we're getting a breakout of those lows. So this I expect to actually run with a breakout. So we'll draw that as a willy box. The issue is we're at break even. The box is 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. Come down one more squares and we'll stop it. There we go. Made some back. So that was a nice 15 pips as a breakout through those lows. We'll let it come back into the channel through there for us again. Oh, that's tempting. I would be tempted almost thinking, but I need the candle body to be coming out of the channel, so we didn't quite break back into it, so we'll let that slide. And this is where controlling those emotions, and especially for me, trying to jump in and be trigger happy is really important, and I've had to be really strict to actually make sure that I do follow my rules. So again, as much as I'd like to take that one, I won't take it. You know, and you'd be up 10 pips at this point, 9 pips, lots of pips. I need a proper close within the channel and then a break with the candle body out of the channel. Now let's see if the channel contains it. It's trying. And we're into Asia, so we sit back and relax a little bit. So I'll let it zip through Asia. And that's been a nice move in the Asian session. Now we're coming out of Asia. Let me speed that up for you. The momentum's been on the down side for a while, and it's going to slowly start to turn up. That's what I would expect. Now, we've got divergence. Can you guys see the divergence? So we're still using our basic chart pattern techniques. And if I get a close of this candle above the channel, we'll enter a trade. And this would be almost a swing photo, so I'd be looking at 15 to 30 pips. There we go, guys. Divergence. MACD momentum's above the MACD line pointing up. We've got a break out of the channel. We've got our 17 pip stop, and this shows a 50 pip target. If I get a, let me draw that down, we've got highs up through here. Whoops, didn't close out quick enough. Well, that didn't seem to close our trade, so don't jinx me, otherwise I'll re-enter it. Come on, hit the bar. There we go, guys. Closed it out. Okay, so since we've been here trading away, we're up 4.3%. And there's the breakout trade above that high. So we got some back. So we've had one push up. So if you'd taken this trade and closed out, that wouldn't be quite a setup, although some people would have taken it. If we get a green candle closing back up and touching these lines and just above it, we'll take another short little scalp. We have to be careful here because it's such a deep retrace that, you know, we've got conflict here with the high. So again, look at your support and resistance lines and set logical targets. Any question, guys, on what's been happening there? I'll slow this down. Here's our entry. And we're not getting a lot of movement through there. Now notice the MACD starting to form a head and shoulder. If this candle closes down below, I won't let it hit my stop, I'll actually close out, guys. And I'll just take a small profit on that and just leave it alone. And that's basically, guys, all I do to scalp the market. Now you watch the head and shoulders, I'm going to start to expect it to turn around. So one shoulder, head, shoulder. Let's see how this one here closes. Now, this is that grey zone. This is a high risk trade. Some people could probably take that short if they wanted to. To me, it's a little bit iffy. I actually want to see an established momentum. Good night, Merv. And you watch it now drop 10, 15 pips because I said that. So this is a deeper retrace. Now if you're trading patterns and fips and whatnot, you might consider this an A, B, C, D, and then it might take off long. Or it might come back down and test these lows again. And this, guys, is all you're doing with your back testing. All you're doing is got your strategy in place, stick to your rules, and actually then just trade it. It's fairly simple. It's boring in a lot of times for some people, whereas I tend to treat it as a game. And you want to do that because what we're trying to do is to hone our skills, make sure our strategy's in place. You know, whether you want to start trading breakouts or you're scalping any which way you like, you want to start to get your technique okay, your money management fine, and then apply that to a live account. And this is what I do on my Sundays. This is what Tim Wheatley, okay, that's going to start to come pretty close. Tim Wheatley calls our soul searching Sundays, which I thought was a wonderful name. This candle closes green. We'll take that. And we'll let that up a bit. Now, I trade two positions. So I've had one trade entered. I've had this. I'll enter my second trade. Trailing stops kicked in. At the close of this candle, I'll shut down both positions. Like that. So nice little scalp. And that's our 1-2 move. So if I get another retracing back in and it goes back in the same direction again, I won't enter that trade. We had a setup there and we had a setup again. Now in my rules, I'll take multiple positions, and this is why I trade such a small amount. That is not a setup. That didn't come into the channel like this one did. I do want the body touching the channel. Of course it moves positively, which is what always happens when I'm trying to tell people how not to trade. But in my experience, I like a proper retrace. And so we've had those moves. Now this is now an extended move for me, so I'd be basically resting. We're coming into the US session. And if I'd done my pips for the day, we're up 7.8, almost 7.9%. I'd start waiting and seeing what's going to happen. Now we've had a breakthrough there, but our MACD hasn't confirmed it. So we let that run. Now, this one, because of the extended run, we're not taking. Now, if this forms a double top and starts to reverse the other way, we'll start looking at a short position as a swing failure. And you can see, even though we've got almost a double top through there, our MACD is starting to slope the other way. So if you trade divergences, this is where you start getting cautious and start being careful of a long trade. Let me just remove this thing. And if that breaks out of the channel and whatnot, we'll start taking short trade. Go, drop. That's a little bit riskier. There we go. Drop one more candle. Give me 10 pips. There we go, guys. You can see how it hovered around that resistance zone. So it's been a little bit iffy. You'll probably find it'll probably try to shoot back up again. The momentum is still slightly bullish. Anything you'd like to ask, guys, or any questions? It's not too complicated a strategy. And like I said, you're basically lining up a couple of momentums. You're using your MACD to give you direction. You've got your channel to give you a zone. Bugger. Not there yet. And we've got this double top here, guys. So we've got a direction coming from the MACD. We've got a moving average zone that price will tend to follow. And what we're looking for is, 5, 10, 15, 20 point pip scalps out of that zone. Got a double top here, guys. If we get up there and that gets rejected off it, I will actually take a short trade if it breaks out of the channel to the south or to the downside. Testing, testing. Breakout traders getting induced and suckered long, and then prices dropped fairly quick. Now, if this candle closes, we'll take a short, and we'll aim for 20 pips. I'll set a take profit. Well, I was trying to set a take profit. Sorry guys, I was going to try to set a take profit down to there, but that's cheating now that it's already moved so quick. So we'll just close out. I do apologize, guys. The problem with backtesting sometimes when it's going so quick is it moves faster than you can move. Wiki candle down. So I'm assuming this big strong move was actually a news trade. Now we haven't quite gotten across of the MACD. If you wanted to be aggressive, you could probably take that. I'll zoom back in for everyone. But I won't be that aggressive here, not after such a violent move back down. Now this is the middle of the US session where I'm now usually going to sleep, and the US guys are at lunch. So what we see in the middle of the US session a lot of times is a fair bit of chop and hot and bother and stuff. So I wouldn't be taking any of these sort of trades. I'll let that run. And after that big move, I would actually let that settle. There you go, guys. We've just hit 11% return on our account. I'm not too sure how many days we've been trading. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. So not bad for a week's, that was a breakout trade, a week's worth of trading, so well done. We're getting a retest of that high again. There's a quadruple top. So I would actually wait for a confirmation now. See how this is really green? I would like that to turn red and we'll take a breakout again. Thank you, Brent. It is fairly straightforward, buddy, and it is actually very benign, and you know, we've actually sped this up, 30 odd times. When you're sitting here for hours waiting for a one Renko candle to break, it can get very boring, which is why, guys, you need to anchor it to a 15-minute or a 1 hour chart. I like the 15 and the 1 hour. It's part of my pre-trade routine. What you're trying to do is basically, catch these breakouts with these momentum. And with that sort of move through the US, I'll just close that out. I wasn't paying too much attention. You want to grab little, that was lucky, you want to grab a few of these little pips and just add them to your account. But you don't want to do it in such a way that you're just jumping into trades willy-nilly. You have to exercise your discipline, and we're not playing this like a computer game, as much as I enjoy computer games. We're doing this to actually build our accounts up. I actually missed that. I wasn't paying attention. But Brent, I thought you were doing something similar at one stage and gave it a try. It isn't a sort of technique, with that sort of candle, Charlie, you're missing it. It isn't the sort of technique, because I'm talking too much, that you'll make huge amount of pips off straight away. Because what we're basically trying to do is capture the momentum change and add that to our account. So use this basically as an adjunct. You're using this to assist or to increase the return you've got on your actual trading account. So I'm coming to Asia, so I'm going to let that all whip out. So I'll put my bigger, riskier moves that I'm taking and whatnot when I'm taking my swing failures. And if I see a Renko scalp set up in the same direction, how's that for a willy box, guys? Right through there, if we include that one. Still in Asia. Let me just slow that down a bit, guys. No, I agree with you, Brent. In all honesty, the swing failure strategy, and I'm really enjoying what I, hear from, good night, princess, what I, get from Chad and Sterling and stuff. I still think that should be the crux. Well, it is for me, the fundamentals of my technique. So I'm looking at swing failures and trying to take things in that direction. However, there's no reason why I can't, if I'm hitting 70, 80, 90% strike rates with my Renko charts, why I can't use that. I do keep my position size small. Now guys, we've just had a spike through there. I might, bit iffy, stick to the rules. I'll use that to add to my position and let it, accentuate my returns. If that gets down to this low, guys, I'll actually close it. It's a little bit too dicey for me. That was a minuscule return. We'll slow it down a bit because I can't react quick enough. But yeah, like you said, master one technique, guys. Don't try to be a master of all, because you'll end up being a jackass of all of them. Yeah, no, it's nice to do that. Now we're still red, so I'm still favouring short. I think it's a great idea. Bow 2-pip Renko is much faster. We've got this with the swing failure zooming at 32 times normal speed. So, if we put it right back down again, it's a different kettle of fish. So, but because I'm using this to backtest, I want to see how the strategy plays out. Now, at the same time, I'm trying to talk to everyone. When I'm doing this by myself now that breakout there is a sell. When I'm doing this at home by myself, I'm taking my time and as I'm seeing candle patterns move, I pause and I slow it down and make sure I get a correct entry, because this entry here, we've fudged it by about 4 or 3 pips. It should be down at the bottom here. So, our result here is, if it works out our way, is going to be better than what it really should be. And you've got to be careful, because with backtesting, you can get a lot of false positives. And what I mean by that is, you can get a lot of results where, you're getting 80, 90, 100% strike rates, where in reality, you weren't there. I try not to, Bo. Depends how quickly I see the market moving and what my, I'll shut that position, and what my 15-minute charts are doing. I don't trace trades. I don't chase trades. So if I've seen it spike down and come back up against me, if it's a valid entry and the momentum's in my favour, all right, I might take it, and consider it as 3-pip slippage. But look at this MACD line. It's really, really flat. The long-term momentum is flat. We're in a big sideways congestion. Like, this is just a massive, massive willy box. So if you're trading swing failure, you'd almost consider this level 3 price action. This is just chop. And this sort of market, you've got to be careful, because it's easy to get burnt, with the Renkos. Can be great for scalping if you're going for just 5 or 10 pips, because you go 5, 10 pips down, then 5, 10 pips up, 5, 10 pips down each time the market turns. But it's easy to get burnt with it. And this is, trading off time charts, the smaller your Renko bar chart, the more false positive and false negatives you get. So you've got to always be really, really cautious of that sort of stuff. Now, we've got a setup trade here on the low, right on this low. So as soon as it hits 10 pips, if it starts to break out, I'll take my profits and run. About there. So 2 to 3 bars. Now, some people will actually use this strategy, or the actual original strategy was on a 10-pip Renko bow, and they're looking at with a 25-pip stop, or stop out, looking to take between 50 and 100 pips, which is fantastic if you can grab all that. That was a nice little scalp as well. So there we go. If we pull up our graph, you can see our equity curves going up nicely. We're up 11.3%. I find the 5-pip Renko gives me a lot more opportunities. 3-pip would be much, much more opportunities again. I just don't have those charts up. I'll have to have a look at it for you. But when or a 2-pip Renko like you're mentioning, I tried looking at a 3-pip, but I got whipsawed around a fair bit. It's like trying to use fib ratios and moving averages and whatnot on a 1-minute chart. There's just too much, in my opinion, too much noise and too much movement through there, which makes it difficult. You'd get way more scalping opportunities. You would have a much tighter stop with a 3-pip. You'd probably be looking at 9 pips, 12 pips maximum stop, but you'd only be looking for between 5 and 15 pips targets. And if you've got the time to sit there and you can be quick off the mark, definitely would be a way to go. Now, we've just had, guys, break of these lows, confirm break, and we're up for a retest. If this comes back down again, I will actually enter short as the confirmation of that breakout trade. If it starts to head back up, and the momentum crosses over, then we're starting to look for longs. So in we go. And what we're going to do here is, because we've got these lows here, as soon as we're up over those 5 pips, I'll pause it and I'll move my stop loss to just over break even. And then if it breaks that, we'll just let it run a little bit more. Eric, have a lovely night, buddy. Take it easy. So this thing has to move for me to actually move all the lines in place. So to take profit down there, set our stop loss, there, and we'll modify it. So free trade. I like free trades. And we stopped out. So well done, people. We're up 15% in 2 weeks. Just by waiting for a little red bar or green bar to break out of a channel in the same direction as a MACD. Oh, we're getting close. If that closes above and it's green, that's grey at the moment. We'll cross back down or back up again. Now the MACD is trying to turn green, but it's also red. Depends on what this candle does. If it closes down, we'll be looking at a short trade. Nope, we're going to go long. All we need now is a close up above it. Just slow that down a bit for me. And off we go. Now, we've got resistance just above that, guys. So if we get up into that resistance, I'm going to look to move to our breakout. And we'll take our profit at that level there. Oh, we got stopped out. No, we haven't. Break even and stopped out just above break even. And there you go, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. Any question, people? Anything you'd like to discuss or say on this? Oh, then it moves down to my position. This is the one time, as much as I try not to get emotional scalping, when it does this to me. When I get too conservative and move to my stop too quick. But having said that though, considering the sort of person I am, I do move it quick. I don't like losing trades, like all of us. And I just tend to be conservative by nature. So I'll wait for this to turn back round for me, come back into the channel and whatnot, and then we'll start looking at taking a, oops, slow down. Okay, that's gone the other way. If it comes back up and this is still green, we'll take a long trade again. So we've had a nice push down, it's come up. So I'll consider this an A, B, C. And if this is a correct C and we get a breakout out of the channel, now we're looking for another position up in this area here. And that's if you were trading your Gartleys or your Fibonacci's or your price patterns and everything else. For scalping, We just follow the MACD and we just follow the breakout. So we've had a breakout through here. The MACD is green, so this is holding us out of the trade. You know, and it might move down or it might move up. We don't know. Or what we've got to do is just make sure that we protect our account and keep adding to it. So I'll get my sells and my buys ready depending on how the market moves. And it's funny with scalping because when you look at it back testing like this, you tend to develop an air of, you hear Aid being called Iceman or some other traders, trading like they've got ice in their veins. Well, you have to be fairly unemotional about it. Sorry, Brent, you said same pair. Do you take long trades when you trade your short in a swing failure trade? If my swing failure is moving in a certain direction, Brent, I will go with the market maker trend and the scalping technique becomes secondary. So if, for example, we had, say we took this as a swing failure down low to the short side, I would not look to scalp long. The market maker's direction trumps the MACD, trumps the channel, trumps everything. And that's just how I've been finding it. A lot of times when I've taken a scalp and it's gone against me and I've had a hard time, it's either when I've had a lot of really narrow range chop, like coming into a news and it's bouncing up and out of the channel all the time and the MACD's flat, or when I've gotten the swing failure wrong, especially with my levels. So, I've tried to take a long after 3 pushes up into level 3 when I should be, getting ready for a short. That's when I've gotten trouble scalping. And the biggest problem with scalping is that because your risk reward is so askew, it's not like, Chad's, hold on guys, wrong one, didn't I? Take that profit, there we go, that's a nice 15 to 17 pips. Because we've got a fairly large stop relative to the price move, you can get into trouble fairly quick. Gee, I picked that one pretty well. 53. 53. There you go. Well, maybe not 53 now, 55. But there's an A, B, C, D pattern. So to answer your question, Chan, I only scalp in the direction of my swing failure. And you'll tend to find that when the market reversal happens, the channels will start facing in that direction. With the channels and with the Renko, when the swing failure occurs up here, I'll just pause that guys, we're trying to get into our swing failures up at these levels. The closer you can get your swing, that's the Asia session. Let me just erase that. So we're trying to get swing failures. So if we were going to go long, right when the wicks are happening on a 15-minute chart. But you'll notice with the Renko scalp, we're not getting in till this point. So you do tend to lose a lot of pips. The move is confirmed and you'll get some, but we're not getting a nice 50 pip move and really maximizing our profit. So if I've saw the potential of a swing failure occurring on my 15-minute chart and I've entered here somewhere and I've got a stop down here and then I see it breaking the channel, I will add to that. I will scalp here and then I'll have a swing failure down at the bottom here as close as I can, and my swing failure initial entry might just be what we call and Pip was wonderful and explained a Pip soldier to me, a small position down here, and as the market momentum proves me correct, I then add to it by scalping and maximize my return. So I might risk 0.5%, but when I've added another 0.5% here and another 0.5% there, my trade ends up, being 0.5%, 0.5%. This 0.5% will double to 1. My 0.5% becomes a 2% trade, and I then basically have a 4-to-1 risk return. And that's what I'm looking for. So personally, I've found I don't like scalping against the market makers or anything else. So that's basically it, guys. It's fairly straightforward. So what I might do is, because I love the sound of my voice and I've been talking for an hour and a half, is I'll pause it there and just see if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask or anything else. No, can't take that one. So if we graph up our results, that's what we took. Took a loss down here. That was a break even or a minor loss. But guys, we did really, really good. We had a 17.37% return on our capital for 7 days work. So not a bad little setting. So we started off with 10,000 and we finished off with 11,737. Thanks, Joanne. There's a lot more better people at it and out there than I am. You know, and when some of these swing failure guys really get on a run, it's quite incredible. There was an interesting article I read. Sterling put out on Chad's Trading, how he had a terrible month. I think it was like 53% strike rate. So he was only right. Oh, sorry, Kevin. So this gentleman was only right. Is that better, Kevin? And I get told I've got a quiet voice all the time. This guy was wrong, only right 1 out of 2 trades, so 50-50. So 1 minute he was right. Cool, Kev. 1 minute he was right, next minute he was wrong. But with the swing failure, because I've got such a great risk reward, he actually came up, cash flow positive and did really, really well for the month. It's like a really nice return. And this is why I like the concept of the swing failure, because if you can see the manipulation in the market and see where the market makers are actually entering these, manipulating the market and doing their stop hunts, and you're basically scalping in the same direction, then the probability of your scalps becomes that much better. So how many trades did we take? We took 20 trades, 1 failure, 1 break even out of that. So, we've just had a 90% strike rate. Take it with a grain of salt, because, we have been, Brent, you're a legend. Guys, click on that and have a read. And I think it's a fantastic article, because it underpins the problems sometimes we have as scalpers because our risk reward is poor. Now, okay, I've done fairly well with it, and Todd does exceptionally well with it. But he's got his own strategy in place, and that's all he does. He doesn't get confused by anything else. And over the years, and I've been doing this for a couple of years, I pretty much feel like I own it. It's not actually my strategy. It's a nice gentleman and Forex fisherman that actually posted it up, and I pretty much plagiarized it and changed it to suit me. But the meat and potatoes of it comes from someone else. But I've worked it and back tested it and live tested it, that I can get to grips with it. And this is what we have to do. And I'm doing the same with the swing failure. Not quite the success percentage-wise as I'd like with the swing failures, with the Renko, with the swing failures compared to the Renko, but it'll get there. And some people are posting some wonderful results in the rooms. So, they're my 2 strategies. That's all I do: swing failure and scalp. And thank you, Brent. I appreciate you putting that link up, buddy. Any other questions, guys? So I actually have to thank Brent again for setting me up with this, well, showing me where the EA is. It's actually nice going back through and testing with that. Yeah, it was a great read. In fact, I'll have to apologize to Chad and Sterling, but I'll see if I can grab. Okay, too many people accessing it, won't let me access it. Showed you've got heaps to work on. How so, Brent? What do you think you have to work on, buddy? Your risk to return was just 1.12 to 1. Okay, fair enough. You know, still better than 1 to 1. That's how I'd look at it. And we all have to improve, champ. And win to loss was 72%. All right, so you had a really high win-loss ratio, but 1 to 1. Why do you think your risk reward was too low then? Were you going to break even too quick, or moving your stop, or trailing? Or that's just the way you had your profit target set? Getting out too early. Tell me about it, Brent. Jenny always tells me I stop too early, but I will raise that when I do record this. I've scalped, buddy, and I used to scalp, 200-300 scalps in a week, and trying to let a trade run more than 3 to 5 pips has been really difficult. So I do feel for you. And it's nice. I caught one big trade which went some 90 odd pips, and I did that on purpose to count the levels. But where I was a bit of a chicken though is I took a 0.2% risk. And that's just something I've got to work on. And this is why I'm really big in backtesting. I know some people don't like it, but I will sit here and backtest, and what it'll do for me is help to confirm it. It's like doing an action and doing it properly to create that muscle memory, like going to the gym or anything else. You start off slow, start with an air weight, and then you work your way up. And that's why I'll sit there and I don't mind buying the EA or anything else and sitting here and just practicing and catching scalps, and then going back and saying, all right, I can take a loss, but I know that over 20 trades, my return on my equity is going to be X amount on average, statistically. And that's what we've got to look at, because at the end of the day, guys, we're trading to make money. If I wanted to play computer games or whatnot, I'd buzz Phil and play Modern Warfare. Or Worms with my son, or something similar. So you'll get there, Brent. And in all honesty, champ, the reason why I think you'll get there is that you're actually thinking about it, and you're putting the effort in, and you're actually trying stuff and taking care of your statistics. So time, it'll just take time. Oh, Joanne, Renko history. Ben Osmond helped me get some Renko history, but it was such a complicated procedure. It was a real pain. The first thing, what I did this week to get enough history for everything was I went to my options, and in options under charts, you've got maximum bars in history and maximum bars in your chart. Now, my maximum bars in history, I've maxed out the maximum I can. I just held down the 9 button and filled it right up. And I only show, usually it only says 5,000 bars on my chart, but for some reason that says 50,000. So that's how much history I try to download. Next, what I do is I go to Tools, History Center, and you'll come up with a box. And you go to Forex, you go to the pair you want to update, say the Euro, and because we're running our Renko off the 1 minute, select the 1 minute, click Download, and it'll try to bring your charts up to date. So, and that's how you get as much history as you can. The problem is it still needs to convert that history. So what I did is I've left my computer on the entire week and last week to grab as much history and store it into memory. There are ways you can download data and incorporate that, but it's a really convoluted process. And Ben was fantastic and got a free backtesting EA that you can actually place trades on and whatnot, which we'll have to share with everyone. But you need a bucket load of history with it, and trying to download it is just a pain in the backside. My best advice for people is if you want to start backtesting Renko, set up a 1 minute chart with the Renko EA on it. Just leave it minimized in the bottom of your screen all week, and then when you come to Sunday, you'll have at least a week's worth of data that you can go through. Now, we only went through a third of the data that I downloaded with all those bars, but I don't want to keep you here for another 2 hours listening to me talk. So, but that's how you do it. Tools, History Center, select your pair, and then select Download. And if that's all done, or before you do that I should say, make sure you've got the maximum amount of bars selected under your options and charts. And then just leave your Renko charts running for a few days to build up that history. Now, volatile pairs will build up bars really, really quick. Pairs like the slow pairs like the Euro Swiss or the Euro Yen can actually have nice trending moves, but I've sat in a trade for 4 hours waiting for one bar to form on the Euro Yen, and because of that I hate trading the Euro Yen. We'll just stop that trade. I'll put up a 10 pip Renko just so you guys can see it. You're welcome, Joanne. I'm not trading this, guys. This is a 10 pip Renko, and the actual original strategy was designed on a 10 pip Renko. And you can see the same sort of movement. You can see one push down, two pushes down, and read it any which way you like. Big consolidation here. And again, you're looking for a break in line with your MACD. So you can use it. Again, with a 10 pip Renko, you don't get as much trading opportunities, but if you pick the swing high, you can still grab 120 pips in a move. Well, guys, if there's no questions, I'll let everyone go. By all means, please share my Skype address around and the indicators. And if you guys want the PDFs on the setting this up, or the I'll stop that, or the little notes that I had, don't be scared to shoot me an email or a Skype, and I'll definitely pass them on. Or if you've got them and you want to share them with your friends, by all means do. Thank you, Sam. You're welcome. It's a quiet session, backtesting Renko. It's not that exciting. It's a fairly simple, boring strategy, which is probably why I used to harass the hell out of Todd and kept asking questions. But thank you for putting up with me. You're welcome, James. And Joanne, I'll Skype them across to you straight away.